I am a unique unicorn flying on a cloud, horn high and proud, singing sweet and loud. I'm a nimble unicorn, softly touching sky, sprightly floating by, a rainbow in the eye. I'm an independent unicorn, breaking from the rest, just trying to do my best on my life's quest. I am a courageous unicorn, unafraid to fight deep into the night, bringing dark to light. I am a relentless unicorn, leaping out of bed, forging straight ahead, bursting through the dread. Hey, this is Nilofer Safdar, author, summit host, coach, healer, and genius activator, and you're tuned into the Genius Activator podcast. And today's guest is Nicole Barker. Hi, Nicole. And I'd like to introduce Nicole as the can't stop, won't stop seven-figure client attraction Wonder Women coach. Hi, Nicole. I'm so excited to have you here. And
Okay.
I just had to speak of unicorns because you have the unicorn client attraction group on Facebook, and I've been hanging out in that group for a year, and it's just been so much fun. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me. And I love your unicorn poem. It's so good.
I was thinking of Wonder Women, but all I found was poems on women. So unicorn it is.
It works for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nicole, I know that when I read the title that the thing that you wanted to talk about, I was so excited because you wanted to talk about the layers of the zone of genius. And for me, I've always had that awareness that there are layers. And when I read your thing, I was like, oh my God, she is going to talk about the layers. And I was so excited. So let's talk about the layers of the zone of genius.
I think that this is something that a lot of us are very much aware of, but as coaches, because we've already been coaching. But I think that as people are trying to find their zone of genius, it's one of those things where like it just kind of eludes you a little bit. Like you don't realize that the life that you had before the life you're creating is actually 100% relevant and everything that you need to get to the next step. I have so many coaches come to me and say, I'm starting over. I hate to break it to you, but that is absolutely not how it works. We don't have a do-over button. We don't get to start over. We are definitely starting with the skill sets that we already have, the experience levels that we already have, the mistakes that we have already made. All of those things are coming to light through this new expression, this new thing that we're doing. None of us are ever new, right? It's not about being new. It is definitely about taking the experience that you had in the past and layering that up in order to help you to get to the next level and to position yourself as an expert in this new field. It is a new field. It is not a new you.
Exactly. I always think about a doctor, right? So even if a doctor stops practicing medicine, as in dispensing medicine, he still is a doctor. So even if he comes into the coaching industry, he's going to bring all his knowledge of medicine into the coaching that he does. So it's absolutely that. And, honestly, I have to admit, I've been one of those persons starting over types until I did it 3 times and I was like, no, I'm not really starting over. I'm carrying everything which is there into what I'm doing currently, and nothing is apart from me. And I love how unapologetically you are. And especially what you talk about, the golden butthole, like total transparency. I actually haven't seen many people, like I do know a couple of people who have that level of transparency, but I've seen you take like your biggest failures and your biggest mistakes and write about those and talk about those so openly. And I'm always like, my God, this woman has courage. So I really have to acknowledge that for you.
Well, thank you.
So Nicole, what, like, when you talk about your zone of genius and you said, I've always been in my zone of genius, I'd love to hear more about that.
So the truth is that zone of genius is actually not something that we find. And it's not even something that we seek. What we're seeking of that is the ghost of it, really. Zone of genius has always and will always exist within us. It really only takes acknowledgement. So what you're seeking when you're looking for your zone of genius is the ability to acknowledge what is already there. And for me, looking back, hindsight has that 2020 perspective, and we can see more clearly, because I was like you, I did the same thing where it was like, oh, I'm starting over, I'm new at this. And sure, there's going to be new behaviors, right? There's going to be new skill sets. But as far as a directive of who we are as human beings, as soul at the soul level, like it's not new, right? We are giving that presence and maybe a new energy to it, but it is certainly not new. So all we have to do to step into our zone of genius, and we say it like that, step into, right? As if it is an action, but truly it is a removal. It is a removal of fear, right? That thing that stops you from talking about your mistakes, that thing that makes you think, what if people think that I'm not an expert? What if people think I'm not an authority because I've made mistakes before? Quite honestly, if somebody had told me that they had done everything perfectly and they had never made a mistake, I would know 100% that they are not an authority, right? So it's being able to peel back those layers and remove things that reveals our zone of genius. It's not finding it, it's not stepping into it. It is claiming what is already there simply through acknowledgement. And the skill set is to remove the fear base, to remove that resistance to saying, what if people don't like me? What if people judge me? What if I'm not good enough? All of these very common core based distressing emotions that we have, is letting go of that. That is the actual action, is to release so that we can acknowledge.
Yeah, and it's always I always say that learning is actually unlearning.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, you're totally unlearning things because you don't really learn anything new. You're only, letting go of all those different perspectives you have, all those different filters that you have in front of your eyes. So you've also spoken about quitting, like uncovering your zone of genius is about quitting. And so I'd love to hear more about that.
Quitting is such an interesting concept, right? Because we have such a huge connotation around this, that quitting means to fail. And maybe in some contexts it does, right? Everything serves in one way and limits in another. But quitting is actually something that it has changed my life. When I quit drinking, right? When I quit doing drugs, when I quit sleeping with random men, when I quit the cycle of self-sabotage, my entire life changed, because really quitting is required for any new skill set. We must quit what we are doing over here on the left to go over here and do on the right what we're born to do, right? So we must quit old behaviors in order to adopt new ones. And people don't want to talk about that quitting context because they think that it means failure. And it does in a certain way. I failed at drinking. I did. I failed at drinking. This was something that I did religiously, and I did very much all the time. My entire industry base when I was working as a bar consultant was built around drinking, and I failed at that. And that failure is what led me to building a 7-figure empire where I actually get to do what I love and I'm happy and fulfilled. Quitting is not a bad thing. Quitting is what gets us to the next level. And I like to think about this as a ladder, is that in order for us to climb up rungs of a ladder, we must let go with one hand. We cannot keep both of our hands on the ladder and simultaneously climb. That is not a thing. We must quit the first rung to reach for the third. That is how it psychologically has to work. And we have such a fear and such an aversion to quitting that oftentimes we live our entire lives on the same rung of the ladder. And that is not the point of life.
Yeah, and also it's like that thing of holding on to. Yeah, I mean you're just holding on to something without even knowing what you're holding on to, right?
Yeah.
And
You're holding it for the sake of holding it. That's all.
exactly. And it's like you're so used to that you're not. I mean, until you let go, you won't realize what's going to occur when that. So Nicole, what allowed you to actually quit? Because
That's a good
I mean,
question.
up till, I'm sure up till that point, you were doing things the way you were doing, and then at some point there was that turning point which occurred. So what allowed you to do that?
I love that you ask it in the context of allow, because that is exactly how it felt, is that I was, for the first time in my life, decided to allow myself to be different than I was before, right? I think that it is that holding on, and that holding on really represents our identity of who we believe we think we are, right? And who we believe we think we are shapes how we feel and shapes our results that we get in our lives. And so for me, I mean, it sounds like the dumbest thing in the world, but there was just one day when I was driving home from somewhere I never should have been, doing something I never should have been doing. And I was driving home and I had this moment of failure, right? This moment of complete and utter, like, give up. And this feeling came in, and I had this voice come in from somewhere in the ethers. And it just said to me, right? I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And this voice, clear as a bell, just said, so don't. And it was like the thought had never occurred to me, like that I just didn't have to keep doing it that way. Like I literally had the epiphany, which now, I mean, it seems so basic and so simple, but all of the best things are, all of the best changes and transitions in our life are a split-second decision of just something so quintessentially simple. That's what quantum is. That's what a quantum shift is this very simple thing. It's not this big giant. Quantum actually means very, very small. And so it was this very, very small transition in my thought process that just said, you don't have to keep doing it the way that you've been doing it. And I mean, it was so like, duh, right? But then I just decided in that moment, I said, I'm not going to drink anymore. And for a lot of people, that is crazy. Like, and a lot of people can't do that. And quite honestly, everyone that I knew laughed at me. They all said, okay, we'll see you in a week, right? We'll see you in a week. And at the time, I didn't promise myself that I wasn't going to drink forever. I promised myself that I wasn't going to drink for a year because I wanted to know what it felt like to not have alcohol in my system. Well, when I stopped drinking, I realized drinking was never the problem in the first place. I thought that the alcohol was the problem. And that's quite honestly what everybody told me. But everything in my life got exponentially worse after I quit drinking. So much worse. The suicidal thoughts, the self-sabotage, like all of the patterns were revealed in their entirety because I was using alcohol as a solution. I was using alcohol to cope with my like menacing anxiety. The agoraphobia without alcohol was crippling. I mean, I didn't leave the house for weeks. It was so hard. And in that like really difficult, challenging time, I had an opportunity to rebuild myself. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people go right back to the drinking, right back to the Band-Aid, right back to the thing because it's too uncomfortable. So allowing myself to be uncomfortable for a very long, extended amount of time is what gave me the ability, the strength, the perspective to change my identity. And I now continue to change my identity all day, every day. That's what I'm doing. I'm shaping who I am by how I think and feel every single day. And now I'm used to being uncomfortable. And it's still not comfortable, but at least it has that context of understanding. I know what it feels like to be uncomfortable, and I'm willing to stay here.
And then the next question is what allows you, I mean, what gave you the strength to be uncomfortable for so long? I mean, really, I haven't, I don't drink or any of that thing, but with food, you know, I can get really uncomfortable, and I know that I cannot move through that. I'd love to know what allowed you to do that.
Well, the truth is, society motivates us by pain, right? They do. It says, don't do this or this is going to happen, right? Fear and pain are the primary motivators of our entire society, is to be kicked out of the herd, to be, ostracized for your belief pattern. If you don't do what we say, you're going to be in trouble, all of these kind of things. We motivate society with fear, but the truth is desire is so much stronger. Right? Desire is so much stronger than fear if we allow ourselves to choose desire. The problem is that feelings like worthlessness and lack of deservedness, that not good enough feeling that we have, stops us from using desire as a motivator. So I had this moment where I realized, like I said to myself, why am I doing this? It was about 6 months in, and I was in an astronomical amount of emotional pain. I mean, I was literally dying from the inside out. It was terrible. And I took a big trip. I went to Bali. I went to Bali with my mom, and I had this really amazing experience where I got really sick. I got like really, really, really sick. My fever was through the roof. Like I was cooking, right? And I was throwing up and I was really, really sick. And this shaman helped me through this pain, right? Of this physical limitation of pain and being so sick. And they put me in these like heat baths, and it was, I mean, it was very intense. And then they did this massage and rubbed all of this out. And through this very uncomfortable, very hot, very intense session, I survived, right? And it was like the difference between knowing about survival mechanism versus like what you want in life. There's a difference between just trying not to die and actually wanting to live. And when I was in Bali, I learned that it wasn't that I didn't want to die. That's not what it was. It was that I actually wanted to live. And I found my desire to be alive in those moments. And so from there forward, and with some regressions in between, of course, I have allowed myself to be motivated by the desire to feel alive instead of the fear of dying.
Wow, that is so intense.
Yeah. It's very
Yes. I mean, you look at a person and you see on the surface, how successful they are, you admire them. And it's only, when they are as vulnerable as you are and as open as you are, that you get to hear the biggest challenges and things like that. So what next, Nicole? What is your like, I know you keep talking about more and more and moving forward. So what's next for you?
Well, to go back on what I said here is that I'm new, right? This is all new to me. And so, in feeling those layers and that zone of genius coming to life, it's also the realization is that 2 years ago, I've only been coaching for 2 years, right? Is that 2 years ago, I had no idea that this skill set existed inside of me, right? I had no idea that I could make this kind of money. I had no idea that I could create this kind of impact in people's lives. I didn't know it was there. And so, logic stands to reason here is the fact that there's definitely something else that I don't know about myself. I'm only 37 years old. There's plenty more for me to learn about what I'm capable of and what layers will be pulled back in this zone of genius, because this zone of genius, although it is wildly successful, is just a step to the next. And so I know that that layer is coming, right? And I may not know exactly how that's going to shape out, but now I have the perspective in my life to know that it's never the end. It's always just the beginning. So as I continue in my coaching journey and helping more people and creating that impact that I'm after, I can see that certain steps, right? I can see little things coming into fruition. The public speaking thing is coming. The stand-up comedy thing, it's coming, right? There's these other little pieces that I can see just kind of floating in the ethers of how this is all going to come together. But quite honestly, it's learning to trust and learning to believe a little bit more each day that the best is yet to come, right? I never could have predicted what has happened in my life. If you went back and asked my 19-year-old self with my brand new baby and you said, hey, don't worry about it. When you turn 36, you're going to get all this stuff figured out, and all this pain and all this anguish that you're going through right now is going to be worth it. And you're going to make $1 million in a year, and you're going to help all these people, and people are going to say golden butthole and unicorn to you. I would have just laughed in your face because I was so knee deep in suffering. But at the time I didn't know that, right? I didn't have the clarity. So I know that the 20 years from now version of me gets to look back on this interview and say, like, yeah, you never could have known what was going to happen next with this part. So it's the willingness to be uncomfortable knowing that it is unknown, and it's okay for it to be unknown. That's the true challenge.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing, Nicole. So thank you so much, Nicole, for being here. And I mean, yeah, I really don't have the words. It's been amazing. And, I've been hanging out with you for almost a year now in your group and in some of your retreats and stuff like that. So how do people connect with you? How do they get more of you?
Well, of course, you have to come join the group, right? You have to come play in Unicorn Land. It's called Unicorn Client Attraction Secrets for High Vibe Wonder Women. And it is a very adventuresome Facebook group, and you can come in and play all day. And also, I recommend that you check out the podcast. The podcast, if you want full transparency, you want that golden butthole transparency, the podcast is going to definitely give that to you in full doses. It's called Real Unicorns Don't Wear Pants. So go check it out.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for hanging out with me. And I'll see you soon. Bye.